There are many, many recordings of wonderful performances made on magnetic recording tape in the 20th century before the arrival of the digital age in the 1970s. But unless stored in perfect conditions, they degrade in condition over time and become completely unplayable if they have been subjected to damp. This applies also to the first digital recordings, which were made on magnetic videotapes. The LPs produced then become the only source of the music. Of course, they have been usually subjected to bad handling and getting dirty, or played with a worn needle, or subjected to heat and becoming warped. Even the hole in the middle may not have been accurately formed, so the speed varies as the record turns, giving pitch variation. It is to the enthusiasts for such historic recordings that we owe our thanks for even attempting to restore these LPs. Perhaps collectors of historic recordings, including up to the relatively recent 1970s, have wondered how they reproduce so well on CDs. Well, they owe their enjoyment of the music to a relatively few enthusiasts with the will to do something about it. Often it is the result of a partnership, as there are two distinct stages in the restoration process. The first is to copy a treated LP, and the second to digitally process the resultant file. So we invited a leading partnership to let us in on some of the procedures involved. John Whitmore is a former member of the famous Leicestershire School Symphony Orchestra. Curt Timmons of Klassic Haus Restorations is the digital wizard who polishes John's transfers from LP. Let's hear from them now.
My interest in classical music began when I was a member of the Leicestershire School Symphony Orchestra in the 1960s. Like many of my friends in the orchestra, I started to buy classical records, initially by becoming a member of World Record Club. Collecting records has been a fanatic hobby of mine for the best part of 50 years. Although most of my favourite LPs have now been reissued on CD, there are many records that are still unavailable from labels such as Westminster, World Record Club, Concertor, Saga and Pi. In some cases the original masters for these recordings have been lost or destroyed. Over the years I've attempted to make my own transfers of several LPs, but the results have been always somewhat mixed. Towards the end of 2011, I came across the Klassic Haus website to discover that the company had reissued some vinyl transfers of very early stereo recordings that I would like to hear again. I made contact with Curt Timmons at Klassic Haus in Oklahoma, and he kindly arranged for me to download some MP3 files from his catalogue. These included some excellent transfers of William Steinberg's Beethoven symphonies on the Command Classics label. The results he had achieved were quite remarkable, and this opened up a few possibilities. Perhaps he would be interested in hearing some of my own LP transfers with the view to restoring them fully and then offering them to the general public via his website. Following a number of emails and a couple of telephone conversations, it was clear that we had similar musical tastes, and so we started to do some work together. Over the last 2 years we have jointly produced over 30 LP restorations, all available now as CDs or downloads. In recent months we have also worked closely with Cameo Classics, helping the company to reissue a number of their titles back into the catalogue. The actual restoration process is straightforward but very time consuming. I make the initial LP transfers and Curt Timmons carries out the minute repairs required to come up with an acceptable finished product. Just by way of an illustration of how the restoration process works, I've chosen the 1967 Pi LP of Tippett's Suite in D. This is played by the Leicestershire School Symphony Orchestra, conducted by the composer. This dramatically illustrates how a second-hand, dirty-looking LP can be restored, provided that it has been cleaned thoroughly and the grooves haven't been damaged by the previous owner. I found this Pi record in a charity shop. My own copy of the disc was mono, but this one, despite looking horrible, was in stereo, so I bought it out of curiosity to add to my LSSO archives. Having first of all removed the dust, debris and fingerprints from the record surface using a soft cloth, this is how it sounded on its first play. This excerpt is from the first movement of the suite. result is pretty hopeless, but not really that surprising looking at the state of the LP. However, this is just the starting point. The intrusive surface noise could be due to damaged grooves, or is it just debris stuck to the surface of the record? The only way to find out is to clean the LP thoroughly in warm soapy water and then dry it with a lint-free cloth. Once completely dry, I then apply PVA wood glue thinly to one side of the record. Leave it for 2 days and then carefully peel off the dry skin of glue. This process is repeated for the other side of the LP. The glue removes all the deep-lying debris from the grooves, leaving a surface that is completely clean. Sometimes the records treated in this way can still be write-offs because of groove damage. However, in this case the Pi record, despite looking terrible, yielded some excellent results. Following removal of the glue, it was played wet on a Lin Sondek SME combination using 70% isopropyl alcohol dispensed via a Lenker cleaning system. Wet playing further reduces the background noise and minimises distortion. The resultant audio file was much cleaner despite a few clicks and pops and some general vinyl background noise. Here's the same passage after cleaning and wet playing. The complete LP was saved in this way and then sent electronically over the internet to Klassic Haus for restoration. Curt Timmons will talk about the next steps in the restoration process, but here is the same passage again, fully restored by Curt. The sound is amazing considering where we started from. This is an extreme case, but it demonstrates that many LPs that on visual inspection and on first hearing may seem write-offs can actually yield very good results. The key is to carefully clean the record thoroughly and transfer it to the digital domain by using a high quality turntable. This all takes time and effort. The more care I take in this initial transfer process, the better chance Curt has of coming up with a good final result.
I'm Curt Timmons, and the name of my company is Klassic Haus Restorations, based in Oklahoma. I restore out-of-print classical LPs and reel-to-reel tapes and offer them as CDs, MP3s, and FLAC downloads on my website, classichaus.us. My interest in classical recordings started in my early teens, and over the years I collected many records and reel-to-reel tapes. With the passage of time, the LPs and tapes wore out with use. When CDs first became available, there was an initial influx of legacy recordings digitally remastered, and I recollected many cherished recordings that I had owned as LPs or reel-to-reel tapes. As the CD age progressed, however, it became evident that there were many recordings that were not going to see the light of day again. I became interested in restoring recordings around 2006 after purchasing a few CDs of restored LPs from online restoration websites. I was convinced that I could produce a similar quality product with some differences in presentation, both in sound and tangible packaging. By 2008, I had produced several restorations that I felt would be worth offering for sale on the internet, and in 2010 I launched Klassic Haus Restorations. It has been a great delight to work with John Whitmore. We have collaborated on many restorations, including the Leicestershire Schools Symphony Orchestra recording featured on this commentary. A quality transfer of an LP that has been played many times has some restoration challenges, but John's careful LP cleaning regimen and excellent transfer equipment provide me with a good source with which to work. My approach to restoration is to eliminate the noise artifacts of an LP, the clicks, the pops, the swishes, and retain the warmth and depth found on analog recordings cut in vinyl without obviously masking noise, rendering it dry and squelched. I use computer software to look at the audio amplitude waves, expanding them to identify the noise in microseconds. I listen with high-quality headphones, moving forward second by second, to identify and remove the clicks and pops that can be eliminated. Here's the beginning of the first movement of the Tippett Suite in D as it was sent to me by John via internet. This example will include the lead-in groove noise and some other artifacts in the background as the music progresses. The sample will then go on to the example John included earlier in his portion of the commentary. I initially ran the entire file through a general declicking preset that I had developed for first-time declicking, the level of declicking determined by the amount of noise present on the file. This is the most crucial step, as it must be done carefully as to not shear away the top end of the sound spectrum and potentially introduce more distortion. The next example shows the amount of noise removed after this first step. If you listen to this sample with headphones, you may notice in the quiet passages some shuffling of music and performers preparing to play. Often this is not heard even on mint condition records because of the level of background noise from the vinyl itself. This is the sort of discovery, the revealing of the human element in the making of music captured on the master tape, that makes the restoration process so enjoyable for me. The next step is to micro-edit the recording to reduce the extraneous noise, the clicks, the pops, the swishes. This is the most time-consuming step in the process as it involves editing in microseconds. I alter the amplitude of the waves, enabling me to visually detect the smallest flaws. I am careful with the amount of noise removed, as it will become obvious if too many edits are made in a short passage of time. I also remove any background hum, being careful not to shear away any audio that will rob the file of its integrity. Once I have completed the micro-click editing, I use a third computer program to create fade-ins and fade-outs, and add some of my own proprietary tweaks that open up the soundstage. The following example is the final result. All of these painstaking steps, from transcription to final edit, help preserve performances that otherwise would be lost and forgotten.
The result of the restoration work done by these enthusiasts turned professional restorers is best illustrated by following their presentation with the commercial result. When Cameo Classics was created in 1973 by David Kent Watson as part of Manchester's Indigo Studios operations, the recordings were issued on LP. 40 years on, the tapes were unplayable to their original quality, so the LPs were presented to John Whitmore to start the restoration process. If you missed our BMR3 concert section, then you can still hear it and listen to the 1973 interview with violinist Michael Davis after recording that first release. So here is the first movement of the Violin Sonata by William Walton, played by Michael Davis and pianist Ray St. Wally on the Cameo Classics CD made from that restored original LP.